good morning, and welcome to CSL Denver, a place, a face, and a space of love, a spiritual community practicing universal principles and applying them to our lives so that we are empowered, so that we are enriched to be vessels of the divine and provide some grace. Because as we continue today's theme, over the monthly theme of divine grace, today we want to look at grace in action. Grace in action. Now, grace in action is this way of the wisdom, the understanding, the magnificence of the divine to express itself in our lives, to allow us to be conduits of love. And not only are we conduits, we also receive it, right? Conduit means we give it out, but we receive it. And so it is this back and forth. It is this interchange of divine love that allows us to understand fully what grace is. Because see, it's more than just acts of generosity and more than acts of kindness. Because sometimes we're in a place where we may have to give that to ourselves. That's grace in action. How many times have you been in a place or in a situation where this, in spite of your best efforts, it just didn't get right? In spite of your most ardent prayer, your most deep grounded meditation, nothing came through. But when you are able to step back and know that the grace of God is always present, it's always moving in our lives, then we can allow the action of it to take place, right? There's a place that says in scripture that this faith, this understanding is not based on your works alone. Sometimes there's a little bit of grace that comes in, because I know for myself, and I'm not going to speak for anyone else, there have been times where I have worked and prayed and meditated and walked in nature and anything else you can think of that is looking or supposed to get me from point A to point B. But in spite of all that, nothing happened. But what did happen was to surrender, to allow the motion of the ocean, if you will, to move. How many times have you watched, or if maybe you haven't, but if you ever go see a river or calm, still ocean, it looks as if nothing is going on. But underneath the surface, there's an action. It's called a current that's steady moving. Even when you don't see it, the current is moving. And that's the way grace is in our life. The grace of God is always active and moving within our lives. It's a current. Any current you want, ocean current, electrical current, pick a current. Whichever one you can identify with, it is always moving in our life. And when we understand that, when we can align ourselves to that, we are allowed to give this to the broader community. We've all heard the idea of be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. That's not telling you not to be active. That's basically saying, quiet down the chatter. Quiet down the moments when we think we know best. How many times there are times, let me correct this. There are times when we think we know better. We've done the so-called homework. We've done the prep work. We've consulted with this one and consulted with that one. And we think we're ready. We really think we're ready. But there's always that little oomph of life. There's always that little thing that we didn't plan for. You know, it says man plans, but God is the best of planners. And so when we can make allowances for that, that doesn't mean you don't plan. There's a saying by Prophet Muhammad that says, "Trust in God, but tie your camel." Trust in God, but tie your camel. That's grace in action right there. Because God may keep the camel there, but just in case something spooked the camel, you need to have it tied. And now in this day where we are fraught with uncertainties and challenges and things that are beyond our control, if we can just be still, we can witness the miracles that are happening in our lives every day. As Teresa said in the reading, sometimes it's as simple as finding a parking spot. As simple as not that the parking spot itself is that significant. What is significant is your state of mind that you bring to the table when the parking spot is there and then it's not. How many times you had a big meeting, or you was going to do something that was very important and you couldn't find a spot? By the time you got to where you were going, you were frazzled. You wish you could have went another direction, but wasn't possible. But if we could just surrender, grace will kick in, because the current is always flowing. The light switch has to be turned on. The current is always there, but if we don't flip the switch, i.e., if we don't slow down, remember that God is always there, we forget that grace is always in action, always present in our life. Because it is a constant force that is always nudging us to be our greatest. Always whispering in our ear, keep going. You may need to slow down, but you got to keep going. And sometimes, if you're a hiker, one of the things you learn if you're hiking, especially in a wilderness kind of place, sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. That's grace. Because if I'd have kept going, I would have found myself in a place that I didn't want to be or didn't have the capacity to get out of. So we have to be diligent in listening to the call of God that allows us to transform, that allows us to be more in any given moment than we thought we could be. Because you see, grace sometimes acts just like a catalyst. It's like a spark. It's like a flame that says, ooh, I noticed something over there. I've been this way 1,000 times and never noticed that. But this particular time I needed it, and grace showed it to me. That's how we want to really begin to look at life, to understand life, to live life. Ram Dass says it this way: grace always meets us exactly where we are and does not leave us where it found us. Does not leave us where it found us, which means oftentimes we're just oblivious to grace being in our life. But when we allow grace to do this, to move us beyond our own expectations, beyond our own limitations, that's grace in action. It's moving, it's working, it's uplifting, it's restoring. And that's what we need today. I don't need to bring up any news reports or wars or rumors of wars or any of that. There's plenty that you can find that. But what we don't find often is the grace to get us through, the grace to come up with solutions to not have these things disrupt our lives. Because in the face of adversity, we often do what? Lose faith. In the face of adversity, we lose faith. But it is precisely in these moments that the grace of God steps in. Because when we are faced with adversity, I'm sure a lot of you heard this, when the going get tough, the tough get going. And God has made us resilient enough to fathom anything with that grace, that unseen benefit, that thing that just serendipitously happens, and you're like, I can't believe that happened. How many times have you been in a situation and you were assured of your demise? I mean, you done looked at it 10 ways to Sunday and you're like, Lord, I check your schedule. I know you're busy. But if you could send some grace this way, I would surely appreciate it. Because that's how God works. There was the program, I'm sure some of you may remember this, Candid Camera. It used to say, when you least expect it, you're elected. Smile. You on Candid Camera. That Candid Camera is your reflection of God in your life. It's that mirror that says, well, it ain't as bad as it seems. We have to begin to live our lives this way. Not in moments of crisis, although we need it then as well, but we must begin to look at how we are reflecting God's grace in our own life, because that calls us to activate it in ourselves, in our environment, in those around us. And don't we need a little grace today? Just think about it. We could use a little more grace. We all know the song, Amazing Grace, How Sweet the Sound. The sweetness is the grace that gets you through from one point to the next. That's what we are bound to do when we open ourselves to God. When we listen to this quote from Max Lucado, he says, grace is the voice that calls us to change and then gives us the power to pull it off. That's grace in action. It comes and it gives us what we need, and then it gives us the power, the courage, the ability to move through adversity so we can pull it off, whatever it is, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's lending a helping hand, whether it's forgiving myself. Because we're in a perpetual evolutionary growth. In all spiritual teachings, you hear the words self-realization and self-actualization and self-discovery. Well, that ain't always that easy. Sometimes I'm begging for grace. Why? Because I can't stand myself. Come on now, be honest. Sometimes you really just can't stand yourself. You know you've been a rascal, or you know you didn't give the grace to somebody that needed it, or whatever. I mean, especially I look now and there's so many challenges that we face. How many times have you seen someone on the street? Or you seen someone that looks to be in distress and you look the other way because you don't want to speak, you don't want to say hi, you're afraid they might ask you for something. Can't even smile. The grace of a smile. We have to begin to really understand this relationship we have with God through grace. Because it was grace that brought us this far. We had a little bit to do with it. Now, I don't want to discount us, but it was grace. If we were to go home this evening and do a little quick journaling from the moment we were conscious of things happening in our life to right now, you could see, just like that poem Footprints, you could see the places and the moments where God was carrying you, where grace just happened in your life, and oftentimes you don't even know it until you're way down the road. That's what grace in action means. It happens when you least expect it. And quite frankly, I would submit that that's the way you want it to be, because if I had anything to do with it, oftentimes I've messed it up. Because I think I know better. I got a college degree and a master's degree. And shucks, I'm the cat's meow. Well, so I thought. Until I found myself in a situation where that wasn't enough. PhD wouldn't have been enough. Here is what we need to do in our lives. We need to surrender, not in a sense of defeat, but in a sense of understanding that there is a higher power, there is a greater intelligence, there is a current that is moving in our lives, that if we just align ourselves with it, things would be okay. A thought came into my mind about a soft drink. It used to, things go better with Coca-Cola. I would change that to things go better with the grace of God. Just like that ice cold Coca-Cola on a hot summer day. So what do we need to do? How do we embrace this grace in our life? How do we activate it and witness it consciously, not in the rearview mirror, but consciously? I want to be able to have the wherewithal to cut the light on in the dark, not after the sun done started shining. I mean, it'll still give me a little something, but it ain't quite the same if I'm in darkness and I'm cutting on the light. The first thing that we need to do, I'll give you 3 tools. The first thing is patience. Because that is something that will allow you to really be aware of everything. Yourself, your surroundings, your adversaries, is patience. Now, this quote by Unknown, that Unknown is a very prolific writer. Writes lots of stuff here, but it says, grace is the divine assistant that enables us to rise above our circumstances. That's what patience gives us. It gives us the ability to rise above. And in today's world, and I know I'm a culprit, patience is a high commodity. We're so busy. We got so many things to do. We got so much to prove. We got, whether it's proving we can do it or proving somebody wrong that we couldn't do it. Pick one. It don't matter. It's the same entity that we just forget about the grace. We forget about the grace. And when we are able to be patient, those things that belong together get together. You can't stop the flow of the current. You can align with it and be patient. Sometimes it speeds up. Sometimes it slows down. Sometimes it's almost like a dead standstill. But in each one of those moments, there's something that's being cajoled in your advantage. Something that is being highlighted, maybe for you to just look over there and see the bird, or just have an inner thought about something. Patience. Now, the next thing we need after we've gotten used to being patient, if we got to embrace faith. Now, that sounds like an easy thing, maybe. But we know the verse, the evidence of things unseen. Unseen. We live in a world today, I got to see everything. I got YouTube, I got Instagram, I got Snapchat, I got so many things that allow me to see, that impels me to see. And if I don't see it, I don't believe it. But we're saying with grace and faith of things that are unseen, that's where the sweet spot is. I would challenge anyone in here, online or in the future, to tell me what life looks like. I'm not talking about your activities now. That's a byproduct of life. But what does life itself looks like? It's an unseen thing. At the birth of a child, there's a moment when there is no life in that child. And they immerse it in water, or they do whatever they do. They used to smack you. They said that ain't kosher no more. Can't do that. That may cause trauma. So now they've come up with different ways to awaken that life spirit that is within, that's there waiting to connect with the flesh. That's unseen. Nobody sees the moment that life ignites. Nobody sees that catalyst that kicks it off. That's grace. That's grace. So let us begin to have that kind of faith. The faith that when I cut on the water faucet, I expect the water to flow. When I turn the engine, the key for the engine to start, I expect it to flow. Now, the only thing that'll stop that is this third. Well, before I do that, Ephesians, let me get this quote from Ephesians 2. Say, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. See, faith, you can't boast about faith because it's a grace from God. You were receptive. I guess you can boast about being receptive. You can boast about having an open heart. But other than that, you have to yield. And so when we understand that, then we step into this third thing. Once we understand that we have to be patient, we have to cultivate this. And that we begin to embrace faith, knowing that there are things that are seen and there are things that are unseen. And most often, those things that are unseen are more powerful than those that are seen. The third thing that we have to do to sharpen that sense is devotion. You have to have a sense of devotion. Some practice, some activity, some inner connection or interaction with the divine intelligence of the universe that allows those, as it says, those who have eyes, let them see, and those who have ears, let them hear. Somebody could be blowing a dog whistle right now and you wouldn't hear it. If a bat was flying around in this room, that bat could see ultraviolet. You can't see it. Those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have ears, let them hear. We too have that kind of attunement to the words of the divine. We too have that kind of attunement to the wisdom of God. But we have to cultivate it through devotion. That means you got to pray. That means you got to meditate. You got to journal. Sometimes you got to get on the track and run. Sometimes you got to go outside and hike. There is a devotion. There is an activity of encouraging the spirit to be present so that you can see it or hear it that we are not doing today. I'll be the first one to raise my hand. Because we get so caught up in the business of thinking that we have to do it all, and that yeah, I say I'm spiritual and religious and I believe, but I know best right here. If you believe, you believe. If you have faith, you have faith. It's not a sometime thing. Now, you may be sometime when you choose to your awareness of it or to activate it, but always be present in the moment so that we can realize the current of grace in action in our life. And so when we look at this last quote by Sadhguru says this: devotion is a place where you do not exist. Life just flows through you as a certain sweetness and beauty. You ever been in that spot? If we were sports aficionados, we would say, we call that the zone. When you step into the zone. I read a quote once by Michael Jordan that said, the first time that he was really, really aware of stepping into this zone, into this devotion of his practice and his belief and his whole armor, if you will, of playing the game, he said, when I looked at the basket, it looked like it was 20 feet in diameter. Don't quote me on the feet, but it was something to that effect, that the basket was so big, there was no way the ball wasn't going to go in. And every time I shot, it just kept getting like a magnet, just drawing it in. But what did we know that Michael Jordan did? We know that after he got cut from his junior high school basketball team, he spent every morning in devotion at the court shooting free throws before he went to school. Not some mornings. Not when he felt like it or he felt good. Every morning, he says, he went and shot baskets. That was a devotion. That's the kind of thing that we need if we're going to cultivate this grace, this love, this intelligence in our life. Now, I know sometimes it might be raining. I'm sure. I don't know if he went out there in the rain. So sometimes you may have to yield a bit to the rain, but sooner the rain go away, you got to go get your shots in. Because this is what's going to enhance our lives and the lives of others. It's going to build community. It's going to allow us to really, really begin to see the grace of God in everything we do. So let us open our hearts to this infinite intelligence, to this understanding that is beyond comprehension. And let us understand that through our words, actions, deeds, and thoughts, that we activate God's grace. That we allow ourselves to be examples of God's grace. And when we can do that, we not only are able to forgive others, we're able to forgive ourselves. Let us pray. So as we take this moment called now to acknowledge, to open our minds to the awareness and the presence of divine intelligence and love, we know that that aspect of the entire universe is moving throughout our entire lives, that the presence of God is always there, and that we are aware of it, and that we know how to activate it and to cultivate it and to allow it to flow through everything that we do. Because it is in that awareness that we become true vessels of the Most High God. It is in that awareness that we become grace ourselves. And I know that to be true for each and every one of us here online and who may listen to this later, because that is our natural birthright, to be a loving presence in the lives of others, to be of service, to understand that we all fall short sometime, to understand that even in those moments, there is a magnificence within us. There is a flame within us that ignites and creates a world that works for all. And so, knowing that that is true here, now, and forevermore, I declare that each and every one of us from this day forward, we will be aware of grace in our lives, and that we will extend it to others, and that we will expect it to be returned to us, because that is the law of the universe. As we give, so shall we receive. And we are giving love. We are giving understanding, compassion, kindness, forgiveness. Not to receive something in return, but to create a world where we can expect good things to happen. And so I give thanks for this understanding that we live in a reciprocal universe, and that we are getting exactly what we pay for. And so it is in that payment, not seeking anything in return, that I'll allow the grace of God to move in our lives and to activate us, knowing that this word has been activated in the law and the mind of God that is spreading throughout the universe, creating this web of connection, this heartfelt understanding that you and I are one. And so with that, I let go, I release, and I know that this prayer is absolutely so. And so it is. Amen.